The sage of Arunachala tells us that the world is both real and unreal, and he tells us also that there is no self-contradiction in this. The world is real in one sense and unreal in another. The world is real because that which appears as the world is the reality, which is the real self. It is unreal because, considered as world, it is a mere appearance of the reality. Apart from the reality, the world has no existence. But its appearance as the world does not affect reality, for it never really became the world, just as the rope never really became a snake. Thus we are taught that the world as such is unreal. It is not wholly unreal, because there is something, the reality, the self, behind the false appearance. The meaning is that reality, being obscured by the world, does not appear to us as it really is. This teaching is briefly referred to as Maya Veda. The world is declared to be Maya, an illusory appearance of the reality. Maya may be defined as that mysterious power which makes the real appear as something which it is not. This teaching has come in for a great deal of violent criticism. It is asserted that the teaching is not to be found in the Upanishads, that it is an invention of more recent writers, which was adopted by Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya. For us, the controversy is set at rest by the testimony of the sage of Arunachala. The teaching that the world is Maya only states a principle known to and admitted by all, namely that things are not what they seem. Modern science, especially physics, has gone far towards confirming it as the fundamental principle of matter. Whereas the reality is one, indivisible, unchangeable, untainted, formless, timeless, and spaceless, our minds picture the reality as manifold, broken up into an infinite number of fragments, subject to change, tainted by desire, fear, and sorrow, confined in forms, and limited in time and space. This rather long and complicated statement is summarized by the statement that all this is Maya. The school of Vedanta which accepts this teaching is called Advaita. Those that are repelled by this teaching are not asked to accept it. It is offered only to those that have realized that the cause of bondage is ignorance, and earnestly desire to get rid of it. Their point of view is fundamentally different from that of other people, and the teaching given to them is naturally different. The merit of this teaching lies in its giving us a synthesis of two apparently unconnected teachings of the ancient lore, namely, that the reality is the material cause of the world, and that it remains unaffected, transcending all duality. Those that are determined to believe that reality has really become all this multiplicity are not called upon to accept the teaching. For them, the ancient lore and sages have provided other ways of spiritual progress. The sages are not at all annoyed if these people assert that their way is alone the right way. But if ignorance is to be transcended, there is no escape from accepting this teaching. For if the world be real as such, there would be no unchangeable reality, without which there can be no deliverance. Thus the teaching about the world is really twofold. But that part of the teaching which says that the real self is the truth underlying the world appearance is separable from the other part. Besides, the latter part, namely that the world is not real as such, is of greater value to us to begin with, because it serves as an antidote to the false belief that the world is real as such. The former part of the teaching is also more difficult for comprehension. Hence the sages recommend the cultivation of the belief that the world is unreal, even though it is not the whole truth about the world. Those who are unable to assimilate the whole teaching would be on the safe side if they accept that part of it which says that the world is unreal. This will be the safe course, because the alternative to the view of the world's unreality often is that the world is real as world. And for the average mind is so made that it cannot be held in suspense on any question that is raised. It must have an answer one way or other to any question that is raised. Reasons for the view that the world is unreal as such are given in ample measure. We shall now consider these. The first reason is the fact of the ignorance that is at the root of all our experience. Once the sage was asked the following question: how can I accept the teaching that the world, which I am sensing all the time in so many ways, is not real? And the sage answered, this world, which you try to prove to be real, is all the time mocking at you for seeking to know it without your first knowing yourself. If once we realize that we do not know ourselves aright, how can we pretend that we know the world aright? The sage has expressed this argument as follows: how can the knowledge of objects arising in relative existence to one that knows not the truth of himself, the knower, be true knowledge? If one rightly knows the truth of him named I, in whom both knowledge and its opposite subsist, then along with ignorance, relative knowledge also will cease. To one that can feel the full force of this argument, no further discussion is needful. The teaching that the world is not real as such will become self-evident as soon as one comes to feel that ignorance of the self is the one source of all worldly knowledge. But meanwhile, some more detailed discussion of the question will be useful. The second reason is that our belief that the world is real as such is not based on any reliable evidence. We shall presently discuss the evidence offered in proof of the reality of the world. But first we need to meet an objection that may be raised. It may be objected that in asserting that there is no satisfactory proof of the reality of the world, we are simply throwing the burden of proof on the other side, on him that says that the world is real. The answer to this is that the burden of proof does lie on him that asserts the existence of the world. The burden of proof does not lie on him that denies its existence. In courts of law, it is a rule of evidence that the burden of proof lies on him that asserts something, not on him that is content with a denial of the assertion. And this is a perfectly sound rule. There is no reason why a different rule should be observed in philosophy. The reason for this rule is that a denial is usually incapable of proof, while an assertion of something positive, as that something exists, is capable of proof. The one that denies is thus entitled to win his case if the asserter is not able to let in clear evidence of the existence of the thing asserted by him. If the asserter fails to adduce clear and unobjectionable evidence to prove his case, the judgment will go against him. Thus the burden of proof is rightly thrown on those that contend that the world is real as such. We shall examine the evidence that is adduced by them, and if the evidence is inconclusive, we shall have to conclude that their case is baseless. Of course, there is the clear evidence of the sages, which is decisive, but we need not refer to it for the present. Before we begin this discussion, we need to set up a standard of reality which shall be rigorously applied. We cannot make use of the standard of reality that is in common use, because it is an instrument of the primal ignorance that vitiates all our knowledge. We must go to the sages for a standard of reality that would guide us correctly. This standard of reality is thus expressed through the words, "That alone is real, which exists unchanged and without intermission." This means that things whose existence is limited by time or space are not real. This test of reality has been handed down from time immemorial and is found recorded in the Bhagavad Gita, which states, "Existence never belongs to the unreal, nor does non-existence belong to the real." We see the same test of reality implied in the Chandogya Upanishad, where reality and appearance are contrasted. Acharya Gaudapada, who is revered by sage Sankara as an adept in the meaning of the sacred lore, states the test of reality this way: "Whatever has no existence before and after does not exist even now." The meaning of both is the same. The Gita verse tells us that a thing is not real simply because it seems to exist at some time, because a thing that really exists is never without existence. The Upanishad simply applies this principle and gives the result, namely that a thing which begins to appear at some time and ceases to appear afterwards is really non-existent all the time. Thus, continuity of existence without change is the test of reality. Such continuity, however, is only evidence of transcendence of time and the other elements of relativity. Reality is not in time, nor in space, nor is it related to anything else as cause or effect. This is the strictly philosophical definition of reality according to the sages. Transcendence of causality is very important. It implies that changelessness is an inalienable quality of the real. And this is as it should be, for a thing that has undergone a real change is no longer the same thing. The fact that a thing has suffered a change shows that it was never real. Things that are in time and space are subject to change because they are divisible into parts. Thus, earth, being divisible, can be made into a great variety of things. Hence, ultimately, it is not real. Thus, indivisibility is also a test of reality. We shall see later how this test is applied. It is also axiomatic that the real is a thing that exists in its own right, independently of other things. Whatever has a dependent existence is unreal. Thus, things formed out of some material, such as earth, wood, or metal, are unreal. As compared to the things made out of them, it may be said that the materials are real. For this reason, the sacred lore and the sages freely illustrate the unreality of the world by comparing it to objects made of such materials, and that reality, the cause of the world, to the materials. For example, a pod is made of earth, therefore it has no independent existence. Such existence as it seems to have is derived from earth. The pot, therefore, says the ancient lore, is only conventionally a pot, but is really only earth. Before it was made, it was only earth, and after it is broken, it will be earth. and even now it is only earth, with the name and form of a pod. Therefore, it is earth all the time. As its appearance as pod is transitory, we are told that the pod is unreal as pod, though it may be real as earth. This reality as earth is only relative, not only because earth is divisible and changeable, but also because, being in time and space, it has no continuous existence. In the same way, the world, which is an appearance in the real, is only conventionally the world, having no existence of its own, independently of the real. Therefore, it is unreal as world, being nothing but the real all the time. But the teaching must not be limited by the analogy, because there is this vital difference, that the reality never suffered a real change. The unreality of the world should be understood by us, so we are told by the sage, by means of three analogies, namely the rope mistaken for a serpent, the wasteland on which a mirage appears, and dreams. The sage has told us that all the three analogies are necessary and should be taken together. For the truth we seek is transcendent and cannot be explained adequately by means of a single analogy. We have seen the use of the first analogy. But when a rope is first mistaken for a serpent and then recognized to be a rope, the serpent ceases to appear. That does not seem to be the case with the world. Even when it is known that the world is only an appearance of the real self, the world continues to appear. This is the objection raised by one that has heard the teaching and been more or less convinced. The correct explanation is that mere theoretical knowledge does not dissolve the world appearance, but only direct experience of the self. But this explanation may be premature at this stage. Hence the sage seeks to convince us that a false appearance may continue to be seen even after it is known that the thing is false. This is illustrated by the analogy of the wasteland on which a mirage is seen. The mirage is a false appearance, just like the snake, but it continues to be seen even after it is known that there is no water in the place. We thus see that the mere fact of an appearance persisting is no proof that it is real. But then a further doubt arises. The disciple says, the case of the mirage is distinguishable. The water of the mirage is conceded to be unreal, because even though it does not cease to appear after the truth of it becomes known, its unreality is proved by the water not being available for quenching thirst. The world is not so because it continues to serve innumerable purposes. The sage dispels this doubt by appealing to the experience of dreams. The things that are seen in dreams are useful. Food eaten in a dream satisfies the dream hunger. In this respect, the state of waking is in no way superior to the dream state. The use of dream objects seems as valid within the dream as the use of waking objects seems valid within the waking state. A man that has just eaten a full meal goes to sleep and dreams that he is hungry, just as a dreamer, having eaten a full meal, a dream meal, wakes up hungry. Both are proved false in sleep. This much we have seen from the dream analogy, that a thing may seem to satisfy a need and yet may be an illusion. The fact is, the need and its satisfaction are both equally unreal. We thus understand that the world is not real as such because it does not satisfy that test of reality given by the sages.